Hey everybody, I hope that you had a good Mother's Day yesterday. Got to spend some time with your mothers, stepmothers, and any other woman that's in your life that's had any kind of influence in your life. Hope that you got to honor them well yesterday, and I hope that you're back to the grind today on Monday, working or doing whatever it is that you do. So I've kind of landed on Monday and Thursdays as the days that I'm going to be vlogging. I think those kind of work well, and it gives me the opportunity to post twice a week. So be on the lookout Mondays and Thursdays in the afternoon. I'll be posting these. I think this video is actually going to be a little bit longer just because I have a lot of stuff that I want to cover, and I'm going to try to do that as brief as I can. I even have notes today, like I don't do well with notes. Like they kind of trip me up, and I can get reading through them and it kind of makes me stumble. I usually just kind of flow, but I wanted to make sure that I get this right. But so today's video may be a little bit longer. We'll see how it goes, but I want to pose a question to you today, and I know that we often have kind of been posed this question, but I kind of want to pose it in a different way. But we often hear, like, if Jesus were to come back, tomorrow or next week, would you be ready? And a lot of times we think about like salvation when we hear that question. We think about like, am I right with the Lord? Am I gonna make the cut? Am I going to heaven? Like, am I still living in sin? We think about it in that nature. And it's often been used as a prompt to evangelize, to get people to buy into salvation. You can present heaven or hell to anyone, and of course, like, they'll do whatever they have to do to get out of hell. And so it's almost like a scare tactic that's been used. But today I want to pose it in a way that's a little bit different, not necessarily salvation based. I'm not asking you, if Jesus were to return, are you gonna make the cut? Are you gonna go to heaven? But more so, like, are you ready? Like, have you been preparing? Have you been walking in the things that you should be walking in accordance to Jesus's return? And so the thing that kind of got me pondering this question, my girlfriend Hannah, she actually asked me a question yesterday, and it stumped me a little bit. I can usually give answers relatively quickly about myself, but I kind of got stumped. But she said, if you could leave one thing behind here on earth that people would remember you by, what would it be? And I really didn't know. Like, I started thinking about, I want people to see me as someone who is humble, who put people before, myself, and things of that nature. And then I thought about, what do I want my children to remember about me, about me being a father? Like, what attributes do I want? But I couldn't really land on an answer. And so just this morning, like, I was still thinking about that because I'm not really sure. And this is going to be like the biggest Jesus juke of all time. But, the answer that I kind of came up with is, it really doesn't matter. Like, I don't, of course, like, I want people to remember me well, but it's not my priority. Like, my main priority is I just want to be known in heaven. Like, I want to be known. I want to be known in the realm of God's kingdom. And so I thought about this image that hit the internet when Billy Graham died. I believe it was several years ago, maybe 2 years ago. But it was an image of him walking up to the gates of heaven, and there was just a line of people, like, standing there in heaven waiting on him. And the caption said, "Welcome, Billy. There's millions of people who are here that want to thank you for, your service and your calling to ministry and answering that call." And so, like, that's what I want to be known for. Like, I want to be sure that I'm storing up my treasures in heaven and not storing them up here. I'm not worried about material things, about a car or a house, or I do want to I do want to have a good reputation, but that's not my priority. And so I believe that our treasures that we build up in heaven, I believe that they're people. I believe that as we evangelize and we share the gospel here, that we're storing up treasures in heaven, because those are the things that we bring with us. We bring people as we evangelize and we share the gospel. That's our calling here on earth. And so, I just wanted to be sure that I'm known in heaven, not necessarily known here, but I want to be known there. And so I want to pose this question to you, and I want to pose it to you in this certain way. But if Jesus were to announce his return for Saturday, would you be ready? And there's a reason why I chose Saturday. And it's simply because it comes before Sunday. Sunday is our Sabbath day. It's our day of church services. For most of us, our church actually meets on Saturday night. But for most of you, it's Sunday morning. And so I just want to pose that, if Jesus were to come back or announce his returning for Saturday, would you be ready? And the reason I ask it in that type of way is because we wouldn't have the opportunity to invite them to church. You would have to say, hey, you'd walk up to people and say, hey, do you want to go to church with me on Sunday? And then realize, Jesus said he's coming back on Saturday. So what does that mean for us today? I believe that the disciples, when they started the early church and they began going from nation to nation, country to country, sharing the gospel, I think that they believed that Jesus was coming back in their lifetime, like very soon, sounded like very soon, and of course we know very soon is different for us than it is to Jesus. So they preached with urgency. They preached a message that they knew would bring eternal value to people, and they believed that it was going to come quick. They believed that Jesus was returning in their lifetime, and so they preached with that urgency. They dropped everything that they were doing and they preached the gospel. And so I think about a basketball game. I'm a huge sports guy, so I love basketball, and it's a very fast-paced game, one of the fastest-paced games there is. But you'll notice, like at the beginning of the game, it can be rather slow. People are getting a feel for the offense, the defense. They're trying to get in a flow, but there's no urgency. There's still plenty of time left on the clock. So they're waiting to figure out, how the game is going to play out. But as you get into the third quarter, the fourth quarter, the end of the game, the clock is running out. And so the game is on the line. They realize that if they're down, they have to start making plays. They have to start putting the ball in the basket to get points to eventually win the game. And so at the end of the game, they actually end up playing with more urgency because the clock is running out. And so I think that I believe that we often don't share with urgency because we're not aware of the clock that's there. We often forget it. We've had 2,000 years to almost become numb to the fact that Jesus is coming soon. So a lot of us don't believe that it's going to happen anytime soon, if we even believe it at all. And so, with this game of basketball, at the end, the clock's running out. So they play with urgency, and the clock is there for us as well. We just don't know when it is. And so we have to remember too that the gospel story didn't end with the ascension. It didn't end when Jesus ascended to be with his Father. Like, the gospel story is still going on. Like, there's a second part to it, and it's Jesus's return. And so there's joy in us sharing the first half of this gospel story as we wait and hope of the second half. Like, the gospel story is still relevant. It's still happening. Like, it hasn't ended. Like, Jesus is the gospel story. And so he's coming back to redeem us and to bring us back home. So there's that joy to be had in sharing the gospel story. And so many times we don't do that because we don't do it with urgency. Like, we have an urgent message, but we're not sharing it with urgency. And so I pose to you today, like, we can sit here and say, what if all day long? What if Jesus were to announce his returning for Saturday? We can think about that all day long, but the reality is we're not going to have an announcement. We don't have a clue. Scripture tells us that he's going to come like a thief in the night, and so we don't know when he's going to come. And so we have to realize that Jesus preached that the kingdom was at hand when he was walking the earth, and we have to believe and have our hope that the kingdom is still at hand. We still have an urgent message. We still have the responsibility of going to the unreached nations to preach the gospel of good news. And so that's on us. And I want to just say this, like, if you think about that question, and you start thinking about what you've been working for here, what you've been doing. Have you been sharing the gospel? Have you been active in sharing your faith? Or are you just settling for services and programs? When you think about that stuff, if you think about that and you realize that something drastically would change if you were to receive that announcement, then you need to realize that something drastically needs to change now, because we live in that urgency. We have to have that urgency, because the reality is he may not come on Saturday. He may come on Friday or Thursday. He may come by the end of today. He may come by the time you get done logging off of this video or whatever it is. We have to live in that urgency, and we have to live knowing that he could come at any time. And it's our responsibility to go out and share the gospel with those that we meet, with those we're in relationship with. And again, the reason I chose Saturday is because a lot of times we can get in the habit of meeting someone that we know needs Jesus, and we can say, hey, why don't you come to church with me on Sunday? And that's fine. There is power in the invitation. But what if we don't have until Sunday? What if Sunday is not an option? We need to live in urgency and be able to preach the gospel where we are. We have to have confidence and be empowered to tell our testimony and our story of good news every single day. Because, you may be able to invite somebody to church on Sunday, but something may happen before then. You never know. Like, we carry Jesus with us. The Holy Spirit resides in us for that purpose. So we can bring Jesus to people in an instant. We can bring them Jesus with our story. We can share the good news. And so before I log off and close this video, I want to talk to church pastors and leaders for a quick second. I used to be in ministry. I was a full-time youth pastor, worship pastor for 4 years. I've been a worship leader in many different capacities for the past 15 years. So I don't ask this question in a vacuum, not understanding what it's like to shepherd a flock of people or be on church staff. But I want to ask you, like, is evangelism in your church a Sunday to Sunday thing? Are you just living for the invitation? Are you teaching your people to invite so they can hear your gospel message on Sunday? Or are you equipping and empowering them to share the gospel where they are every single day? And so we have to realize that as believers, as followers of Christ, that falls on every Christian, not just a pastor, not just a church leader, not just someone on staff, but it falls on us. And we really need to equip and empower our people to share the gospel. They may get into a place where an invitation is fine and it's acceptable, but first we have to preach the gospel. We have to share our stories. We have to be able to equip and empower them to know that they can do that with confidence. So my question is for you today, like, I don't even know how to end this video really. There's just so much stuff here, but if you can think about that question and realize if you were to get that announcement and something in your life would need to change for those next 5 or 6 days, then something needs to change now. There needs to be an urgency on our message that honestly the modern church is lacking. And so as we think about that, let's just think about what we can do in our lives to make sure that we are preaching the gospel, that we are equipped and empowered well, and as church leaders and people who are called into ministry, like how can we equip and empower our people well to do that? So I'll leave you with that. You can ponder and think on it. Think about, where you stand on some of those things. But I encourage you, your story is important. Your testimony is important. There are people in your life. There are people that you may meet in the coffee shops when they open back up, in the grocery store, that need to hear your story of Jesus, and you're equipped, you're qualified, you have everything that you need at your disposal to tell that story and share the good news of Jesus. So be encouraged with that today. Please go on my website and subscribe to my email list. You'll get a couple of free things there. You'll also receive some more content bi-weekly. So I encourage you to do that. And if you would, just share this video, share it with your friends, like it, all that kind of stuff, all over social media. And thank you. Have a good day, and God bless.